Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Warcraft video. Today we've got a really fun lore one. So the recent leak discussion made a lot more people aware about the Shadowlands, a part of the WoW lore that, while Blizz have dabbled in it, they've not really fleshed it out as much as, say, the Emerald Dream. Now this has only been added to by what Sylvanas said after the 8.2.5 cinematic and her hungering darkness that she's got to feed. So, regardless of the veracity of any of those leaks, Blizzard do have a need to create game content for World of Warcraft, and that no doubt is going to drive them to drop.com into the Shadowlands. Oh yeah, today's video is sponsored by drop.com, formerly known as Massdrop, who have partnered with audio legends KOS, the creators of the world's first high-fidelity headphone all the way back in 1958, to create the best gaming headset for $50, the Drop X KOS GMR 54X.
What's even better is the new customers who use my link will get $20 off these best-in-class headphones. They've got a sweat-reducing open-back design, lightweight that's comfortable for hours, and of course, most importantly, best-in-class audio and mic quality, and it really is shockingly good for the $50 price range. And that's something that can't be overstated. Audio really does bring you that extra level of immersion in games. Plus, it's WoW, so don't be the guy who's ruining the guild Discord by using loudspeakers and a table mic. These are great value, perfect entry point into using a headset, and with top ratings, free USA shipping, and a $20 discount with my code, you can't get better for the money. So thank you to drop.com for sponsoring this video and helping out our team. And with that, let's drop into the Shadowlands.
So you might be thinking, hey, I've been in the Shadowlands before, and technically you would be right. That's where your character goes when it dies. We've been there through many quests. We even had A&R bring us back from there whenever we die during the Argus boss fight. So what is the Shadowlands then? Is it just a grey screen filter and some spooky music? Right now, yes, that's pretty much all it is. However, years ago, that's all that the Emerald Dream was, albeit it was a green screen filter. In Legion, though, Blizzard fleshed it out a lot more, though, showing us both the Dream equivalent of the real-world locations, but also parts of the Emerald Dream that were not mapped onto the material plane, like the Dreamway and the Heart of the Dream. So that begs the question, does the Shadowlands work in the same way? Now, why do I even ask that? Well, that's because the Shadowlands seems to be the mirror of the Emerald Dream. At least Chronicle pretty much puts it that way. According to Chronicle, the Emerald Dream was created by Freya, but it goes on to say that others believed that the dream had always existed in some form, and that Freya had merely tapped into that fundamental realm when she shaped the Emerald Dream. Chronicle states that, like the Emerald Dream, the Shadowlands are tangentially linked to the world of Azeroth, and later on, it says that the Shadowlands spans all reality, and that while the dream represents life, the Shadowlands represents death. There is a lot to break down here, actually, because it describes them as being sides of a coin, but also in being different when it says that the Shadowlands spans all worlds. So how can the Shadowlands span all worlds but also be tangentially linked to Azeroth and be somewhat described as a mirror-ish to the Emerald Dream? Well, I actually think it's kind of simple. The Shadowlands span the entire universe, but I think they're concentrated in planets proportional to the planet's size and the presence of a world soul. Really, it's the world soul that I'm thinking about here. Think about, say, the Higgs field and mass, kind of how that works. This would kind of explain how the Azerothian Shadowlands are really important. That's because of Azeroth being the strongest world soul. But also, of course, how the Shadowlands do span pretty much across the universe. Now, while the Emerald Dream officially is just an Azeroth thing, it's also true that the Rift of Uln bleeds into the Twisting Nether and the Great Dark, so that means it's highly likely that there's more to the Emerald Dream there than meets the eye. Now, remember that earlier passage from Chronicle? The Chronicle quote says that the dream was created out of another realm, basically. Now, perhaps there is a universe-spanning Lifelands, a counterpart to the Shadowlands. Indeed, if the Lifelands did span across all worlds in the universe, while the Shadowlands span death across the universe, then it stands to reason that Azeroth is pretty much the last place that the Lifelands really is powerful because of Azeroth being alive. And, you know, well, the state of the WoW universe is rather barren, destroyed by old gods and the Burning Legion. So, basically, right, that is how the Shadowlands and the Emerald Dream tie together. It seems like they're both fundamentally based out of universe-spanning things, but they sort of are different realms, with the Emerald Dream being created by Freya, and the Shadowlands just being a lot less explored. And as we're going to explore later on in this video, well, there is a lot of mystery to it. So given what I've just said, especially remembering that it describes Shadowlands as being tangentially linked to Azeroth and just its place in the broader lore, I think we can conclude that it is possible that the Shadowlands can be expanded into a full place, maybe even bleeding in elements of the Dream and maybe even some of the Twisting Nether and the Great Dark Connection through Blizzard exploring what the Rift of Valen actually might be. Now, given Blizzard's focus on death-related characters, it indeed seems to me extremely likely that we will visit the Shadowlands property, regardless of whether that leak is true or false. First, though, I'm going to throw some curveballs at you. We've covered the similarities between the Dream and the Shadowlands, showing how feasible their exploration could be. But what's really interesting is when you get into the differences between them. There is no Titan management of the Shadowlands, right? There's none that we know of right now. Given how Chronicle links them both to Azeroth, that is very surprising. Freya formed the Emerald Dream. A&R, through Freya, uplifted the Green Dragons and charged them with protecting the Dream. And when we go into the Dream, what do we see? We see Titan constructs. That's what Cenarius is standing on top of at the very end of that raid. The Shadowlands, however, they seem to be entirely a mystery. And they're also the only realm that does not, or the only plane, whatever, that doesn't have a dragon aspect charge with its defense, and it seemingly is untouched by the Titans. Why would this be? Well, we've got Titans that represent everything bar death. Which Titan has a Grim Reaper-like scythe? Which one has a dungeon journal full of death-related abilities? Argus. So, what if Argus's inability to take form and travel to Azeroth led to the Shadowlands being a blind spot to the Pantheon and them not really paying mind to it? Or worse, what if the Pantheon have been involved with the Shadowlands in some way but have simply not told us? So just given the elements of mystery there and the Argus connection, yeah, I mean, Blizzard could obviously set up a lot of future plot lines with this. Then there's also the topic of spirit. This is something I want to go into a lot more detail on later. It's the fifth element that Azeroth actually absorbed early on, basically because the World Soul was so powerful, and that led to there being no spirit elementals, and that's what threw the other four elements into chaos. So you've got to wonder, spirit, is there a link between that and the Shadowlands? I mean, it would kind of make sense, so there's another thing there. So we've got Titan mysteries here, we've got the sort of spirit mysteries. Now those things are interesting, but Blizzard have not actually done anything with them yet. So what have Blizzard actually hinted at? And it turns out there's quite a lot indeed. So let's talk about the characters of the Shadowlands and the plot lines that we're probably going to run into. Now, this is quite a tricky topic because we just do not know what the pecking order of the Shadowlands is. We don't know who rules it, we don't know if it has its equivalent to Ysera or Azeroth's wild gods, but it clearly does have ancient characters. So let us begin with the most mysterious one, seemingly the most fundamental one to the Shadowlands, and that's one that was introduced in Legion. Now, this was through the legend of Odin. Odin decided to peer into the Shadowlands through a ritual that Helya, at that time his ally, casted. Now, she said, beings of death are ancient and powerful, great Odin. To meddle in their realm is dangerous, even for one such as you. Now, Odin, honestly, being a bit of a jackass, just dismissed her concerns and pressed onwards. A great spirit appeared to Odin, bellowing up from the ethereal mists, shapeless, to surround the keeper in shadow. What will you give? The spirit asked, to peer beyond the veil of this world. Wise Odin considered the wraith's question. I have two eyes, he replied, one to see in this realm of mortals, and one to see into the realm of spirits. And with that, Odin plucked his own eye from his head and presented it to the spirit. The spirit clasped his eye and swallowed it whole, and great Odin saw. Seeing through this given eye, great Odin saw the Shadowlands. He saw life, saw it even in the land of death, and he was satisfied that his Valajar would live beyond the mortal realm. And yet still he saw death. He saw souls in torment, souls in anguish, and husks of the dead lay all around him. He saw ghostly wraiths with no face, and others with no form, and all were made of death itself. And as he saw, even the great Odin, master of the halls of valor, chosen of Aman'Thul, was afraid. That is the passage from the legend of Odin. So we know, according to Helya, that the Shadowland spirits are old and powerful. Odin sacrificed his eye to one of these spirits, and presumably that's an extremely powerful spirit. We don't know who this spirit is. Maybe it's Bomsamdi's boss. Clearly, though, it's interested in our affairs. After all, why would it make this trade with Odin? Because presumably, sure, Odin can see into the Shadowlands, but presumably it, because of Odin's eye, it can see into our realm through that sacrifice. So that is I think, a potential major character in the lore. Then, of course, we do have Odin himself. There's a lot of potential for him to be involved with the Shadowlands, and the same goes for Helya and Aegir. So Helya was the original leader of the Valkyr. She was forced into service by Odin against her will. Now, for this, she pretty much harbored a hatred for him, eventually betrayed him, and then Aegir became her replacement. Now, this is where Sylvanas comes in, as she made a pact with Helya. Now, this likely means that Sylvanas can access the Shadowlands through Helya, and that the two of them are working towards some sort of similar goal. After all, in Battle for Azeroth's Island expeditions, we are told that Helya is back and that she is gaining in power. So, we've got that going on. We then have Bomsamdi, the Xandalari Low of Death, who we know has a boss in the Shadowlands through what he said in Battle for Azeroth. Now, the identity of this boss is unknown, though it could be that aforementioned Great Spirit that took Odin's eye. Could be a lot of other things, though. Now, through Battle for Azeroth, we tried to work out who took Vol'jin's soul, and who actually told Vol'jin to name Sylvanas as his successor. Now, while we have met Vol'jin's spirit, even his spirit does not know. So we found out that Bomsamdi did not name Sylvanas, and that neither him, Aegir, or the Lich King were involved with his soul after death, and that none of them named Sylvanas, with Aegir saying that Vol'jin was touched by the hand of Valor, which certainly is mysterious. Now, when we last left off, Bomsamdi told Vol'jin to search the Shadowlands for answers. Now, this means that when Vol'jin returns to us, he will likely know A, who manipulated him into naming Sylvanas as War Chief, and B, who interfered with his soul after death. Aegir hinting at the latter by saying the Hand of Valor certainly is interesting, especially as she says it's something that she can't forge. She clearly knows what it is, but will not tell us. So there you go, Blizzard have just crafted yet another mystery box for the game's lore. There then, of course, is the Lich King, who gained power in the Shadowlands through the enslaved Scourge Valkyr. Interestingly, though, him, Helya, and Aegir, they're not really beings of the Shadowlands. They're merely ones who have, power there for other reasons. Perhaps Bomsamdi is the same, given the nature of the Troll Loa, maybe. Now, whoever Bomsamdi's boss is, they're likely a more fundamental aspect of the Shadowlands, which, does put the Death entities, who we know as being more bridges between our world and the Shadowlands, at least I would sort of say. And then to round it off with two curveballs, there also could be the boatsman from the Kultiran lore, the one that Jaina met in Warbringers, and then Muzala, who could be that mysterious spirit from earlier, or could just be another Death-related Loa. We've actually done a full video on him in the past. Then I'd maybe speculate that there could be Titan-related stuff down there. I mean, certainly saying the Hand of Valor, I have to wonder if Odin is hiding something. Maybe there's a Titan Watcher or Keeper down there associated with the Shadowlands, but it's been covered up maybe. But I think that, there's parts of that could be unlikely because, of Argus not being involved in the Pantheon in that time. There's then also Old God connections that may exist, as well as any Void ones. Then there's also Hakar. Now, we've not seen Hakar since we stopped Jindo in Cataclysm, and in the process, we pretty much freed Hakar. Of course, Hakar could be Bomsamdi's boss, as the Shadowlands leak suggested, but just generally, Hakar is a character that could be relevant here. So overall, right, you've got so many characters here. The Great Spirit who took Odin's eye, the Hand of Valor character, whoever that might be, they may be the two most powerful characters there. You've got the Azerothian Death personalities being the storytelling vehicle to get us to the Shadowlands. Then add to that the speculative elements that I've talked about here that could be expanded upon, and I think you can clearly see how much the Shadowlands has to offer. To quickly do that, here's a rundown of some potential stories. So you've got Helya versus Aegir and Odin. That's absolutely one, as well as the impact of Odin's sacrificed eye. We've then got Vol'jin. Who raised them? Who put Sylvanas in charge? What are their motivations? What is Vol'jin's new purpose in the lore? Then there's the Xandalari, who are pledged to Bomsamdi, meaning that they sort of are by extension pledged to his boss. We then have Una from Legion, and the Shadowlands being involved there. And then BFA, of course, got involved with many of the Death-related characters. Then more recently, the Tauren Heritage Armor questline, that actually involved the Spirit Realm being out of balance, dark spirits entering our realm, and the importance of balance between the realms. It even had a new model for its Malevolent Spirit. Now, the thing is, Blizzard would not make a new model just for a single quest. so that does suggest we may be visiting the Shadowlands pretty soon. And then all of this is without me mentioning the old gods. Given their interest in the Emerald Dream, the Emerald Nightmare, and them getting involved there, we can't assume that they won't be interested in the Shadowlands as well. Void, of course, is also described as being weak to death, and, it's described by the Void that Sylvanas is serving the ultimate enemy. So, yes, even the current Old God plotline could take us to the Shadowlands. So, clearly, there's enough here for an expansion. There's definitely enough here for a major patch and raid. I think the visuals could really work, and even if it is completely fake, the ideas from that Shadowlands leak are actually quite good, like the sort of more like crazy cosmic Rift of Valenn-like elements bleeding in, and if Blizzard were to build the Shadowlands and the Emerald Dream as being sides of a coin and maybe they bleed into each other, you could get some really cool visuals where the areas meet. Then of course the Rift of Valenn, yes, being connected to space and the Twisting Nether, so there'd be even room for more fantastical elements there. And if you were just sort of exploring even an extrapolation of a part of the world soul, that could get really pretty mental, which would be fun. So let's try a bow on this one. This hasn't really been a speculation video. I mean, I have alluded to speculation, yes, but mostly this has just been me collecting the various things that link the Shadowlands just in one place, in one video, mainly to basically just show you how much leads there, how many characters are involved. And there's even some things that I cut from this video, but basically, in some ways, all roads point to the Shadowlands. Now, there are other ways in which all roads also point to other locations, but I mean, that's just the nature of speculative lore and the way that Blizzard like to weave their mysteries. But certainly, I do think the Shadowlands is somewhere we're going to see. I think when you look at all the plot lines here, I mean, it seems pretty obvious. You've got, I mean, even like this is me ad-libbing at the end of the video now that I've just spoken it all. You've even got things like the Pantheon leaving, the whole Shadowlands Argus connection where it's like, yeah, we had no keeper who was blessed by Argus. What would have happened if the Pantheon, got to Argus, got him out of, I guess woke him up, and then Argus was a member of the Pantheon, and then they went to Azeroth? What would Argus have done? What keeper would he have installed to look over the Shadowlands? Would that keeper have made the Shadowlands equivalent of the Emerald Dream? If we were to assume that the Emerald Dream is like a construction on top of the Lifelands or something. Okay, the Lifelands bit, that's complete speculation, but you kind of get my point here. There's so much just interesting expansion of the lore that they could do. So, I mean, yeah, that's pretty much my piece on it. There are a lot of other topics I'm going to be covering over the coming weeks and months, though, in the lore. I've got a massive list written out, so it'll be really fun. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video, and with that, I will see you next time.